Hey folks, my name is Darby Sherman. I am one of the facilitators with the Practice Center. I teach or I facilitate mindful forgiveness groups, and I also do some speaking. And I wanted to come up here and kind of talk with you folks today about what forgiveness even is, because there's many definitions of it floating around the world, and I think that that's sometimes a big barrier to this work is the many outdated, kind of half-assed ways that we've learned about what forgiveness is. So I think the best way would to be going through what forgiveness is not and then what it is. So I'll preface this by saying that when I do groups, one of the questions that I ask in the first session is, what have you previously been taught about forgiveness prior to coming here? And it's always a very wide array of answers that confirms to me that we as a community, as a culture, as a society, we don't have a set clear definition of what forgiveness is. And a lot of folks will say, oh, forgiveness is forgetting, or forgive and forget. Or there's a lot of folks that come from a religious upbringing, and forgiveness is something that we do to, be a good person and to go to heaven or to be forgiven ourselves. It's this kind of conditional forgiveness. Or a lot of people, it's oh, forgive, just let go, do it for yourself. But then 10 years later, there's still feelings of anger and revenge and grief. So one thing that's really important, and my goal with these groups, is that we can really be real about what forgiveness is and what it isn't. And with that, we can actually practice more of it, because well, you'll see as we go through this video. So first, let's go through what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not condoning unkindness or excusing poor, reckless, or violent behavior. So one of the reasons that I wanted to do this video is because I saw some social media post floating around, and it was somebody advocating for, like, why are mental health professionals, why are like healers, why are we always talking about forgiveness? Like, how can you forgive somebody that did something like so awful, or systems or groups of people that committed atrocities? That's the right word? I hope so. And violence and actual like hurt and these kind of like very problematic behaviors and actions that people or groups of people have had. Like, why would we forget this? Don't forget it. You don't need to forget that, or forgive that. And I could see where they were coming from, because yeah, there's some people in this world that do some really fucked up shit. And because we are practicing forgiveness, or we are exploring the concepts of forgiveness, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that somebody that's an asshole is an asshole, and there's just no sugarcoating that or getting around that or denying that or minimizing that. And I think that the thing that's important about forgiveness is calling a spade and saying, yes, this person did have very hurtful, violent, problematic, extremely dangerous behavior, right? We can just say that, and we can still touch and play with forgiveness and what that is. Forgiveness is not forgetting that something painful happened. And the question that I always pose to people with this is, how do you ever truly forget that something painful happened to you if you are within your awareness? Because we can, I think we have all had experiences of denial or minimizing something that happened to us to cope with it, to get through that, and to survive, right? But if we are actually truly taking stock of our life and the things that happens to us as humans, it's a very messy experience that we have here, right? Full of moments of joy and love and luminosity and well-being, but then we also all have stories of pain or suffering, or just, again, like, for lack of better terms, fucked up shit that happens to us, right? And I sometimes wonder if by intentionally forgetting that, we do ourselves the disservice of, what I don't want to equate pain or suffering with like richness, but the growth and the level of self-awareness and the depth of our life that comes with the processing and making peace with the pain that we have gone through. So forgiveness is not forgetting that something painful happened, because we're not really living the full wholeness of our life if we are forgetting, right? And how does one ever truly forget again? Forgiveness is not an otherworldly or religious experience. So while forgiveness is something that is huge in all types of religions around the world, there's this is the way I describe it. Forgiveness, while it can be a religious experience, forgiveness is more or less something that we do for, our spiritual health. And that is our relationship to ourself, our relationship to our circles around us, to the world around us, and that deeper meaning of life. And that is something that may or may not come from going and sitting in temple or in church. But it's that, and it's so much more than that, right? I once heard that religion is the cup to which it's like spirituality is the ocean around us. It's constantly flowing, it's abundant, and there's so much to it. And religion is a cup that holds that, and there's structure to it. And what if forgiveness is thank you. What if forgiveness is bigger than that, but also something that is rooted in reality and rooted here in how do we exist in our day-to-day life and hold this essence with us? I hope that made sense. Forgiveness is not denying of or minimizing suffering. So again, we are very real with the fact that suffering is a part of life. Suffering is part of the human experience. And again, we do ourselves a disservice if we try and push that away. What if we embrace it and use it to build something that is a life of meaning? Forgiveness is not reconciliation. So when I am not mindful forgivenessing, I am a hospice counselor, which means that I work with folks that are at their end of life, folks that are losing loved ones, and people that have lost their loved ones. And a really common theme here is forgiveness. And often what comes up is, how do you forgive somebody that has died? How do you reconcile with somebody that has died? And the truth is that you can't. And in many situations, whether our villains or failed protectors are alive or aren't, there might be situations where it's not safe to be around this person, it's not realistic or practical to be around this person, or simply this person is not around. So if our forgiveness is contingent on reconciliation, it doesn't seem possible for a lot of folks to do that. So what we're talking about here is that forgiveness is an inside job that is not dependent on the reconciliation. So at the end of going through a group or of exploring forgiveness or practicing forgiveness, you, if this person is around in your life, have the choice to reconcile, but your forgiveness is not dependent on this reconciliation. And forgiveness is not justice. Again, people in the world do fucked up shit, and justice and forgiveness are two very different things. Justice is a vital part of our society, of holding people accountable, of enforcing laws, and we can forgive somebody and still hope that justice is served and seek and make sure that justice is there, especially when it is necessary for our society to function, right? And finally, forgiveness is not kumbaya. So never in groups do we sit around and hold hands and chant, and it's not this like flu hot like kind of experience. It's not fluffy. Forgiveness is real and raw and grounded in reality, really. It's never just this idealized, romanticized version of it. And finally, what forgiveness is. So forgiveness is the peace you feel when you let go of unresolved grievances. What does that mean to you when you hear that? Is that a huge what? Or the peace that you feel when you let go of unresolved grievances, right? So another way that I like to describe this is that grievances are like ghosts. These are the stories, the people, the experiences that maybe they're not ghostly coming out to haunt us and scare us, but they linger. They're energies that are still around us, and they're part of our being. And what if we had a practical set of tools to help us actually make peace with these unresolved grievances and let them dissolve, right? While we're not forgetting that they're there, we're just giving them the space to release. And then they become part of this fabric of our life that is part of our past, and we can continue to move on with our present and our future, right? So what if we can move on with our lives without this extra weight? Forgiveness is reclaiming your power. So throughout groups, we use these terms of villain and victim. When something happens to us, you did this to me. Why did this happen to me? I blame you for this. And there's this really clear connection between us and our villain or our failed protector. So when we are able to forgive and we are able to experience all of the emotions that come with that, the anger, the grief, the feelings of revenge, the feelings of remorse, of guilt, all of that, when we can understand all of that and we can make peace with it and we can declare a new story for ourselves that is not this tie to our villain, how empowering is that? How empowering is it to be able to have some authority in your life and reclaim the power that was lost at the time that this experience happened? Something to think about. Forgiveness is about your healing. So you often hear that, forgiveness is something that, I think there's this saying that like holding on to anger is like drinking poison, because the anger doesn't affect this other person. It's something that you live with. So forgiveness is medicine. Forgiveness and the ability to allow our emotions, as big as they are, to flow and to rise to the surface and release, and this ability to not get stuck on life and people and situations that happen to us. It is healing, not just for your spirit, but also for your emotions, your mental health. And there's a huge link between forgiveness and reduction in cardiovascular stress, improved immunity, slower cognitive decline. All of this, there is clinical data showing that forgiveness is beneficial for our entire well-being. Really interesting stuff if you want to go Google that. Again, forgiveness is the process of moving from hero to victim. So it is about acknowledging and being real with the suffering that we experience as humans, and also the compassion that we have towards ourselves for overcoming that, or the ability to overcome that, or developing that ability. And again, we're not forgetting what happened. We are not minimizing or denying. We are becoming the heroes of our lives. And I know that sounds like very girl boss energy, but it's something so much deeper than that. It is, again, moving from victim to life is happening to me, to hero of I am in control of my life, and also making peace with what we can't control around us, which is actually a lot of shit. Forgiveness is for you, again, not the offender, because you might not be able to communicate to your offender that you've forgiven. And we're not letting the offender off the hook necessarily. We are allowing a more peaceful experience within our lives, and a way and a tool, a skill set for us to cope with life. And ultimately, forgiveness is a choice. So you can watch all of these videos on YouTube. You can participate in a mindful forgiveness group. You can read all of the books on forgiveness. And if you decide that, this isn't for me, that's okay. That's you. And this whole process is about you learning more about yourself and returning to yourself. And so if by the end of this that's something that doesn't feel quite right, maybe it's not at the moment, but maybe 10 or 15 years from now, forgiveness will be something that's more in your sphere. And our hope is that we can give you the tools to experiment with that and play with that and hopefully bring it into your life. But, we recognize that that might not be the case for everybody. And I, as a facilitator, have to make peace with that as well. I can only present you the tools, and what you do with them is your choice entirely, right? So we're not saying that forgiveness is something you have to do, but it's something that, what if we can hold assholes accountable? We cannot deny or minimize their behavior or condone it, and we can create peace within ourselves for our one very precious and short life that we have. So I know that this was a lot to process, what forgiveness is not and what forgiveness is. I hope that if you did have any questions about forgiveness or about the group, that this could help offer some clarification for what we're doing. Ultimately, forgiveness is a skill set and a practice to help us empower ourselves to find peace and to develop compassion for ourselves, really. And then from that, maybe that will spill into the world around us. Who knows? I hope you all have a great day and take care. We'll see you all soon.